With the U20 World Cup on the horizon, Ego assigned each of the Blue Lockers specialized training. And with the release of Blue Lock Chapter 309, the Blue Lock team has finally returned to the facility, each with a new weapon by Ego's definition. For this video though, I want to talk about Shuto Sendo and his specialized training, which will eventually lead to him awakening Predator Eye in the U20 World Cup. Despite how wild this idea sounds, you guys by the end of this video better invest in your Sendo stocks going into this next arc. Before I get into the video though, I want to leave a spoiler warning for the latest chapter of the Blue Lock manga being chapter 309, and if you have not read it, I would suggest you click off this video now if you wish to not be spoiled. Lastly, join my Discord server, it's called the New Egotist Geeks, and the link to it is down below. Now, if I want to make a case that Sendo has Predator Eye or will awaken it in the next arc, I have to first explain the basics of what Predator Eye actually is. Predator Eye is a vision ability in Blue Lock which utilizes hyperfixation to increase the deadliness of a player's actions during a game. We see this in multiple capacities, not just in offensive plays, but also in defensive ones. But no matter the play, the main trigger for this ability being used is hyperfixation on a specific target. For offensive plays, the main two characters who use this ability are Kaiser and Burū. However, their application of this ability is very different. Burū uses his ability to focus on the goalkeeper, using other players as shields to throw off their timing for an uncontested shot. While Kaiser, on the other hand, uses it to focus on a weak point in the net or in an opponent's defensive press to then use his Kaiser impact weapon to decimate teams. On very specific occasions, however, Kaiser will use his Predator Eye on the ball itself, as to make direct contact with it under certain conditions where he doesn't have full control. This can be shown with the Magnus impact, where Kaiser has to strike the ball perfectly in order to get the desired spin, or when he tried to cannibalize Isagi's play with Hiyori to get a goal for himself. When it relates to off-the-ball movements, Kaiser actively uses Predator Eye there as well. This less relates into how Predator Eye actually works and more to another factor that relates to Predator Eye, which I'll explain later in this video. But Predator Eye is also used on defense. A prime example is seen with Rin, where by hyperfixating on Isagi and Kaiser's link-up, he was able to intercept the Kaiser impact cross-magnum. So when it relates to the ability and the user, so long as that person hyperfixates on a specific point or a specific target or a specific player on the pitch, they can use Predator Eye. But now I'm sure you're probably asking, why can't every player use Predator Eye? I mean, Isagi, for example, when tapping into his true flow state, focused on only one thing, being the desire for victory. In a way, he's technically hyper-fixating on that one goal, so why couldn't he use the ability? Well, that's because of two things. The first being that you need an incredibly high game IQ to use the ability. Predator Eye is essentially a pair to another ability in Blue Lock, Metavision, in the sense that both abilities require an incredibly high game IQ to awaken and use. The main core function of Metavision is to get a grasp over the current state of the field, both players and mindsets, to create a rational conclusion, which leads to a prediction of the future. Predator Eye kinda does something similar, but on an individualized scale. Where Metavision works to expand the user's vision through head rotation and peripheral vision, Predator Eye uses hyperfixation to focus on one specific target, while still inputting all the same amounts of information. If you're using Metavision, you're focusing 100% on the entire field. If you're using Predator Eye, you're focusing on one specific target at 100%. So technically, you both are inputting the same amounts of information, but from a Predator Eye user, they're inputting way more information on one specific person than a Metavision user could. In that sense, if you're going one-on-one with someone, it's actually better to have Predator Eye as opposed to Metavision. This is why you see Isagi losing to one-on-one matchups with Burū during the Ubers game, where Burū scored his double nutmeg goal for instance. Both players took in the same percentage of information, but the attention to detail on one target is greater with Predator Eye than it is over Metavision. But the other core factor that contributes to a player awakening Predator Eye is actually their ego and the environment in which they thrive best in. Because when you look at every confirmed Predator Eye user, they are all restrictive ego types. Yukimiya, Burū, Rin, and Kaiser, they all possess a restrictive ego. I know that there are going to be some people who try to argue that Shido has Predator Eye, but he unfortunately doesn't. Shido, for one, is a freedom-based player, and when you look at what Predator Eye does, it literally restricts your vision. It is, to put it simply, a more beneficial version of tunnel vision. And for Shido's playstyle, he doesn't need that, or really even do that. Shido can score without even looking at the goal or really anything, and his natural athleticism lets him perform crazy plays of physical dominance. But in a lot of situations, Shido isn't focusing on the ball or really anything. He's just following his ambition to score goals. He isn't restricting his vision to focus on anything, because he really doesn't focus on anything. His explosions guide him and make him feel free, the exact opposite feeling you need to have if you want to awaken Predator Eye. As for Shido's eye design, Shido's eyes have always looked like slits, even in the most recent chapter being 309 as of me making this video. Sure, you have episode Nagi where Shido wasn't drawn with slits for his pupils, but that's due to an alternative artist for the spin-off manga. If Shido didn't just have slit pupils and really did have predator eye, he wouldn't be drawn with slit pupils in the most recent chapter. It's the same with Corona, whose eyes are the exact same as Shido. It doesn't mean that he has predator eye, the same logic would therefore apply to Shido. But now that I've gone through my explanation of predator eye, how does it relate to Sendo and him awakening this ability? Before I explain, I want to remind you guys that if you are enjoying this video so far, to leave me a like and subscribe down below to see more awesome Blue Lock content just like this. It costs you guys absolutely nothing and it helps me out immensely. And if you want to help even more, if you were to become a member of the channel, you'd earn some awesome benefits like personal video requests and shoutouts in videos, but you would also get your name mentioned in the Blue Lock New World movie as a contributor to the project, and this also applies to leaving super chats. So like, subscribe, and become a member today to show your support for me and my content. Well, let's start by focusing on the requirement that I just talked about, and the fact that Sendo does in fact have a restrictive ego. When you really look back at Sendo, he really highlights the traits of being a restrictive egoist, even more so that he isn't a freedom-based player. During the dialogue between Sendo and Sai prior to the match against Blue Lock, Sai proposes a future for Sendo, to which he appears to be content. Sure, Sendo does appear to be fine with that kind of life, but so was Burū. When you look at Burū back in the second selection, he was fine with the life that he had. Only after suffering and awakening did he finally evolve. And Burū is a restrictive egoist. A similar situation applies to Sendo here. Those who align one way or the other when it relates to freedom or restriction coincides with the environment in which they thrive and evolve in. Sure, you can thrive in a freedom-based environment while still being a restrictive ego type, like Kaiser for instance. But the main factor that relates to your ego to describe whether you are freedom-based or restrictive-based comes from the fact of whether you have the ability to awaken or evolve under those conditions. During the U20 game, after saving Bachira's shot on the net, Sendo breaks away from his previous ideals that he had, reclaiming his ego with a new expectation for himself. You could even look beforehand with his dialogue with Aiku, where he says, "When the enemy is crazy strong, the ace cheers everyone up and turns the world upside down." He's legit saying when everything gets rough and tough and the opposing team is really strong, the ace breaks free from those restrictions to elevate the entire team. And that is exactly what happened to Sendo during that final save. Another piece of supporting evidence to this is prior to halftime, or after receiving a pass from Sai, Sendo begins to stress over its speed and trajectory. Yet despite this, he says that he'll surpass it and go beyond them to become the hero. He's breaking through that restriction and the expectations forced upon him by this pass, which is a key component of being a restrictive ego type. By this logic, Sendo is a contender to receive Predator Eye, but what evidence makes me think that he'll awaken it going into the next arc? Well, that comes from two things. The first is an interview done with Kaneshiro and Nomura. A fan asked Kaneshiro and Nomura about specific characters who will be getting some development in the future, to which Kaneshiro listed off a bunch of characters. Bachira, Kunigami, Sai, and also Sendo. This same interview is where it was confirmed that Sai and Isagi would eventually team up, so you can use it as evidence for the credibility of this point. With this, the mangaka confirmed that Sendo will be getting some central focus in a later arc of the story. But my other piece of evidence relates to Sendo's training during the 2 weeks away from Blue Lock. While other players like Atoya, Corona, and Gagamato had very obvious training for what to improve on, Sendo's was a little bit more crazy. Because Sendo went to war. Just kidding, I know, it looks like it though. But based on his gear and positioning, it seems like Sendo either went hunting or went and participated in some kind of paintball tournament. In my opinion though, I believe he went hunting. When it relates to hunting, the core qualities that you want to have are patience, focus, timing, and precision, all of which relate to Predator Eye and how it's used in the story. Burū became more patient and utilized specific timing, shooting only when the time was right after noticing the keeper's blind spot and hesitation. And Kaiser uses Predator Eye with precision and focus as to accurately score with the Magnus Impact. Both of the core players who have Predator Eye in their arsenal actively use these core elements that a hunter would when they go hunting. So when you think about it, what weapon suits Sendo better from his training than awakening Predator Eye? But it also makes sense given his training and participation on the Ubers team during the NEL. Going to Ubers, he and Burū were on the same team, and Sendo was actually the closest to Burū in their formation. And since Burū acquired his Predator Eye weapon from Snuffy at Ubers, It wouldn't surprise me if Sendo was to awaken this ability, not just from his training outside of the Blue Lock project for 2 weeks, but also from understanding how Bara uses it after his training with Snuffy in the Neo Egoist League. But overall, those were just my thoughts as to how Shito Sendo could potentially awaken in the U20 World Cup, and what this evolution could mean for his arsenal going forward. Despite what you want to believe, I think Sendo is one of the more underrated characters in the entire series. And if he does happen to awaken Predator Eye, not only does it make sense, but it finally gives Sendo a weapon that he can use to compete with the other ace strikers. Maybe I'm hyping him up too much, but Sendo is by far one of the most underrated characters in the series, and I will not listen to any Sendo hate. But aside from that, I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and will continue to enjoy it in the future. I just want to say thank you so much to all the members of my channel who help support me and my content. And if you wish to earn some awesome benefits like they do, and even get your name mentioned in the Blue Lock New World movie, become a member yourself, and help support me moving forward. Just a final reminder to join my Discord server if you're ever interested in getting any more involved with our amazing community. As for the question of the video though, do you think Sendo will awaken Predator Eye in the U20 World Cup? Leave me your thoughts down below in the comment section. And like always, thank you all for watching, like and subscribe to see more awesome Blue Lock content just like this.